Docker networking basics. Yes, Docker networking is a pretty complicated topic, at least by concepts. And for you to understand this, there is a need for detailed information or knowledge of the networking concepts, the underlying networking concepts of the operating system Windows or Linux. Then, if you want, you can know the internals of Docker networking. In this particular module, I'm only going to touch the basics which are essential requirement. We will first have the brief knowledge of the Docker networking and more important, the related CLI commands. And then we are going to see what are the different Docker network drivers which are available so that we know this is how the network communication is happening at the conceptual level. And then practically I'm going to demonstrate how a bridge network can be used for communication between multiple container instances. So first let us understand overview of Docker networking. Now why does networking become so important? See, we have understood pretty well that a Docker container is as good as a machine, little less than a virtual machine, but it's as good as a machine and it has its own IP address. Every container has got a unique IP address, and if one container instance has to communicate with another container instance, it cannot be a direct communication. Because they are different IP addresses, there has to be some kind of network which has to be established between them. So Docker container and services are so powerful that it takes care of the complete networking aspect so that the containers can communicate with each other. And not only between containers, a container can also talk to a non-Docker application. A non-Docker application, when I say, it implies that the application which is running probably on the host machine. And sometimes we want to also make use of the host operating system for communicating with internet. Something really beautiful is when we are working with Docker applications, rather when our applications are running in some Docker container, they don't have to really worry about the underlying operating system. The underlying operating system can be Linux, the underlying operating system can be Windows, or maybe in one case, one container is on Windows, the other container is on Linux, and still the Docker is going to manage them all in a very platform independent way. We don't have to worry about the internals of Docker networking. Very basic things which we'll have to do. Let us see quickly. So first and most important thing, I would like to use the command docker info. Docker info gives the complete information about the Docker. And you see here, there is something called as plugins. So these are the network plugins which are available. Bridge, host, IPVLAN, MacVLAN, null, overlay. These are all different network drivers which are available in my Docker installation. Right now this is Docker for Unix, that is Linux. Something similar is the list which we are going to get when we work with Docker for Windows. So this is what we will get for Windows and this is what we get for Linux. These are all different Docker drivers, network drivers we call it. So in case you want to know information about about the list of all network drivers, all the networks which are associated with the Docker, you can type docker network ls and that gives you the complete list. So you see here we have got bridge driver and that's the default driver actually. Then we have got host driver. This is some user defined driver which I have created. We can also create our own drivers. And like this, you can use docker network inspect and you can say bridge. And in bridge driver, the default bridge driver, what are the different containers? You can see that also. So right now you see there is one container available. The container now is making use of awesome Feynman. This container is actually making use of this bridge driver. So see docker ps, we have this container. Let's stop this container and remove 8, 9 and let us remove this and you will note that the same command docker inspect bridge now says there are no containers. So using bridge or rather inspect, we can figure out how many containers are attached to that particular network. Bridge network is the default network, and that is basically used for communication between two containers when they are on same host. We will talk more about it little later. And of course, we are also going to see other types of network. So these are Docker network is basically the command help. You can connect to the network, you can create the network, you can disconnect, you can inspect the network, you can list the network. So we have already used ls and inspect, and I'm going to show how you can actually create a custom network and how you can connect to that network, your container, and of course how you can disconnect after that, and then prune all the disconnected network. Or if you just don't want to prune all, you may probably want to remove any one of them. So these are all different Docker network command options, which I'm going to show you with some example towards the later part of this particular module. So yes, once again I repeat, Docker networking is something very essential, especially when multiple containers wants to communicate with each other. Yes, there are multiple situations. One is you can have Docker containers both on same host, but what if there are containers on different hosts? If you have a Swarm network, Docker Swarm network created, Docker Swarm service created, basically it is going to involve multiple hosts, and the containers which are on different hosts will have to communicate with each other. Even that is pretty well taken care of by the Docker networking. So I repeat, Docker networking is a really advanced topic if you want to go deeper into it, where you essentially need to have little bit of knowledge of networking on how does it actually work. But as a developer, if you are looking at it, you don't have to get into the details. You can just use the existing infrastructure which is created by the Docker installation, and that will make the Docker net containers communicate with other containers or other non-Docker applications, or maybe with the Docker host. Thank you.